we'll talk about. This is just an example of another jQuery function that's built in that you can use to toggle things. So I just have this set up so when I click on the button, it uses the slide toggle to show and reveal an image. But you'll notice that if I click image 2, I'm getting a completely different result. But if we were to jump over to Coda and look at the code for the page, don't mind this being in the header where it shouldn't be. It should be down. You'll see that it's just your normal HTML stuff going on. We've got a wrapper, and that wrapper has an H2 with a class of toggle button, and then it's got a div with an image in it. But then the second line is the H2 with the class of toggle button, but what follows it is just the image. This image isn't wrapped in a div like this image. Okay? So what's happening is, this is the jQuery down here, and I'm just saying when I click on the button, I want you to figure out whatever I clicked on. That's what this means. This down here references whatever was just clicked on. So it says when I click on anything with the class of toggle button, I'm going to look at that thing that I just clicked on, find the next thing on the page, and then toggle that. This is called chaining, and you can chain functions and events like that with jQuery. So we find one thing, then we tell it to do something else, find the next thing, and then this function is only applied to the thing that it found after the button we clicked on. So this isn't being applied to the button we clicked on, only being applied to the thing that follows it. Does that make sense? Yeah? Okay. So what's happening is there's only one function that's doing both of these slide toggles, right? We click this, it toggles that, and we click this, and it toggles that. And this is one of those things where you'd be trying to figure stuff out, and you'd say, well, if I have the same exact function, why is it doing something entirely different? And that would be a good example of why you should use the jQuery documentation and say, slide toggle. So we would come over to the documentation in the API, and here it says, the slide toggle function method, slide toggle method, animates the height of the matched elements. Okay? So while you may think that it's revealing or sliding away the thing you're trying to get it to change, it's actually just changing the height of it. Which is why here on this page, the first image appears to be sliding away, because jQuery isn't changing the height of that image. It's changing the height of the thing that's holding it.
So basically it's using the div as a frame.
Right.
Okay.
And it's animating the height of the frame that's holding the image. Versus with the second one, the image directly follows the button. So when we click on image 2, it's not animating the div height, it's animating the height of the image. And the images want to stay proportional, so when it animates the height of that image, it's also animating the width of the image, which gives you that goofy enlargement effect. Okay? So these are things that, functions that exist in jQuery, and you just have to think about how you want to use them. So if you just go put slide toggle on some text, you might not get the result you were hoping for. So you have to look at how stuff works and understand what you're trying to do, and really think about, okay, what am I trying to animate the height of? So when you structure a page, when you build something, these are things you have to take into account. Does that make sense? Are there questions about this particular, is anybody just really confused right now, like, why did that not work? Why did that work differently? No? Okay. So then we will jump into the fun part. We've been doing really simple things. We've been using functions that exist within jQuery. to do stuff, to animate things, to hide them, to show them, to fade them in, to slide them out. Those are all built-in functions. People, wonderful, nerdy people, have written what we refer to as plugins, which is basically somebody said, I want something to be really easy. I want to create a slideshow really simply. All I want to do is put some images on the page, and I want to say, give me a slideshow. So they write a lot of jQuery code to make that magically happen for you. So the plugin, all the plugin is a bunch of code, jQuery code that somebody else wrote, and they created a new function for you. So like we're using fade in, fade out, slide toggle, those things. People can write code and create a new function. And then all you have to do is say, take this div and make a slideshow. And jQuery makes a slideshow. I get excited because I'm nerdy, but I promise it's useful. So we will look at a certain type of plugin. So this is all being done with jQuery. So if we look at the HTML, we look at the page source for this, you'll see that all I have on this page is a div with a bunch of images in it, right? And then I've got like an empty div here that's called pager, and I have a next button. These are all stripped down things to show you how things function and not how to design anything, as a disclaimer. So the HTML that I have for this page is really simple, right? There's not a lot of stuff going on. But what I've done is I've used a new function called cycle, and that's a plugin. Somebody wrote a plugin, they created a function called cycle, and now I can tell cycle to do certain things. So the HTML that we start with is just this. But now, if we inspect this page, you get entirely different results. So now what we see is we've got a div with an ID of gallery, which is the same as I started with. But jQuery has gone in and it's done a lot of other things. It's added styling to position that div. And then when we look in it, it's taken my simple images that used to just be an image that linked to something, and it's applied a lot of other CSS and HTML to those images for us. And then I had a div called pager that was empty, and now we'll see that it's actually full of list items that have images in them. So jQuery does all that stuff for you. The plugin is doing it for you. Okay? So when you use the inspector on a page where you're using the plugin, you're going to see the result, the HTML that's built by the plugin. But if you were to just view source on a page, all you're going to see is your original HTML. Two totally different things. Okay? So there was a lot of code that you saw for this particular plugin that I'm telling it. I'm telling it to do a lot of things. I'm telling it to scroll horizontally. I'm telling it to have a medium speed. I'm telling it not to just start cycling through these images when I start. I'm telling it what to use as the next button. I'm telling it where to put those thumbnails. What? Yeah, that's interesting. And now we've got nothing.
Maybe the projector just went to sleep.
How's that? Good? Okay. I'm gonna have to watch that. Tell me if it goes blue again or green. Okay, so we're telling it to do a lot of stuff, right? But if I were to come back here and we're going to look at the original HTML for the page, I'm going to cut all this. So let me make sure I get all of it. I'm sure I will launch this. Okay. still missed something, but that's okay. So this is the basic function, just like you would use fade in, fade out, slide toggle, anything like that. I've loaded up a plugin, and now I can use .cycle. So what cycle does by default is it takes whatever div that's holding your images and it turns it into a slideshow. So if we were to come back here and reload this page, now I just have one big image, nothing else, and if we wait, it fades from one image to the next. That's what that function does, is it takes a bunch of images and it creates a slideshow for you that just cycles through the images. So all the other stuff that I plugged in there that I was telling it, those are parameters. Those are options that I have for that plugin that the person that wrote the plugin created for me. So you can't just like tell it anything. You have to look at the plugin, look at the developer's website, and see what options that plugin has. So that plugin is called jQuery Cycle, and you will see that it does a lot of goofiness, which we do not want to see a lot of this goofiness. But it has a number of effects. So if we click an effect, it'll do all kinds of goofiness. It'll just do your standard fades. It'll do scrolling horizontally, scrolling vertically. So these are all just effects that you can use. But those aren't really options. Those are just one option you have. All of the options for this plugin can be found in the options reference page, which all seems like gibberish. But if you look, they say the cycle function can be passed a command string in the form of this. So all we were doing before by default was just saying cycle with our parentheses, so load up the plugin. But what they're saying is if inside of those parentheses you want to give it more information, you can. So down here, we're looking at all of these different options. So we can change if it pauses when you hover over something. We can make the images show randomly instead of in the order that we put them in the HTML. We can shuffle them. We can change the speed of things coming in versus things going out. We have a lot of options. So these options, I was using some of them back here to tell it what I wanted it to do. So effects, all of your options go between curly braces for this plugin. So you open up the curly brace, you drop a line, and you put in your first option, a colon, and then between single quotes, you tell it what effect you want. So if we do scroll horizontal here on our page, we're back to this, and if I click next, it scrolls horizontally. And if we come over here and I say fade, instead of scroll horizontally, we reload the page, I hit next, now it's fading. Yes?
Is there a way to actually like make those little thumbnail pictures on the bottom actually like the full width of the major image?
Yeah, so this plugin, by default, if you use, they call the thumbnails at the bottom, they call that a pager, right? Because normally it's just numbers. It would be like if you went to a website that had a really long article that was paginated, where you have to click like page 2, page 3, page 4. That's why they call it a pager. It's just whatever they want to call it because they wrote the plugin. If you don't give it all this stuff at the bottom down here, I am telling it what to put in that pager, right? So that's why you see some HTML in here. You see a list item with an image, things like that. If I were to delete this, here will be the trick. If I delete this, the last item doesn't get a comma, by the way. So if you put a list of things in, you put a comma after each line, but the last one doesn't get one. So let's see if I broke this. Yeah. So by default, you just tell it you want a pager. It gives you a bunch of numbers. That's all it gives you. So if you click on, I'm hovering over a number, that's what you get by default. What we were giving it